Hi, if you or your children are suffering because of your relationship with your ex partner, because it's stressed or strained, or maybe they're just not a nice person, this show is for you. Welcome to the High Conflict Co Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olson and Charlie Jewett. Enjoy another episode now.
Okay, everybody, Brooke Olson and Charlie Jewett coming back at you with episode 13, Keeping Children Out of the Middle. Now, Brooke, this may be one of the most heated kind of topics we talk about, or the one that does the most damage and probably causes, the parent who's the parent who's sane and paying attention, the most heartache and the most shed tears, right?
Yeah, I mean, you get the children in a place where they're being forced to choose between the parents, and sometimes the covert actions by one of the parents really causes distress in the children. And our goal in all of this is to find ways, no matter what's going on, no matter who's trying to push that button, to get the children out of the middle of the fight that's going on.
And I think the norm, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the norm is that none of the children wanted this in the first place. It's probably a rare family where the children are jumping up and down. Yes, I wanted you guys to divorce. I didn't want the unit to stay together. So they're already in some form of grief and loss and suffering. And then to have one or both parents then, use them as a tool or as a spy or as a lot of things we're going to talk about, bad mouthing, things like that. That's just got to be devastating to these kids.
It's a horrific place for them to be, and to really look at it from their standpoint, to see what's going on for them internally, is the place where we can really start to create some change. There's this opportunity to really look at what we're trying to create moving forward, and give these children a way to go that doesn't have them trapped in this tug of war between the two parents.
Yeah. Because divorce doesn't have to be unhealthy. Grief is not unhealthy. It's a part of life, right? So divorce doesn't mean divorce doesn't have to hurt the children in an unhealthy way or a permanent way, but the way divorce is handled can leave some nasty scars, I would think.
Yeah, and sometimes, Charlie, especially when kids are older and they've witnessed parents going at each other for years, and they look at this as an opportunity that, like, the parents are getting divorced, and wow, maybe things will calm down because they're not going to be in this anymore.
Yeah.
And then to only find out that it just continues and it escalates, and it becomes this place where the kids are used as battering rams for trying to get their way.
So let's get into it. What do you want to share with the audience today, or what kind of tools do you have for us?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about how some of the parents put these kids right in the line of fire, how they use them as tools. There's money issues that are going on, and a parent will sometimes try to get more time so they get more money, even though they don't have the time to spend with the child.
Yeah.
They'll put them in there as a place of, this is my right and I should be able to do this, and they don't look at the larger picture. You and I have talked about this over time, and to really be able to see what it is from a higher perspective that the children need, rather than what the parent needs in that.
Yep.
A lot of this has to do with control and revenge. The parents will put the children in the line of fire because they want to punish the other parent for leaving them, and they don't stop to look at what the cost is that the child rings up in their own nervous system and in their own sense of self that comes out of all of that.
Yeah. And I've talked to you about this in the past. I'm absolutely shocked by the behavior of the parent who's left. There seems to be a syndrome or something. There's some sort of set of responses or actions from the rejected party, the one that didn't want the marriage to end or whatever, right? And
Right.
They just freak out and lash out and don't let go. Even the negative intimacy, they stay involved in whatever possible way they can, even if it hurts the kids.
And we've talked a little bit about that as being a natural unwinding.
Mm-hmm.
That original piece where, oh my God, I don't want this, you have to come back, I'm going to make you pay, all of those pieces that go through that grief process, right?
Yeah.
But for normal people, they get their head back around, wait a minute, there's a child here, or there's children here, And although I don't want this to blow up, or I want them to stay, or whatever is going on, they start to slow down. They start to come into real time, and they start to make different choices. But for this group of people that we're talking about primarily in here, there is something about being rejected, something about being left behind, something that brings in that negative intimacy that keeps this piece going. And in order to hold them there, they will make the kids a spy, and they'll go in and they'll get the kids pulling paperwork and looking at bills and taking pictures and recording conversations and all of this stuff that really puts the child in this place of anxiousness that is intolerable for them. I was talking to one of my clients a few days ago, and their 10-year-old daughter had come to their house with this new iPhone, and the parents said, wow, we don't have phones in this house, and while these phones are here, you're not going to be able to use them. You can take them back to your other parent's house, but these are our rules. The child seemed to be fine with it. And then they started to look at it, and they said, well, I need to see what the child's doing in the phone, which is the right thing for a parent to do, the right to have that right to do that, and to look and see what's happening. And they got in the phone, and lo and behold, this child had had this phone for 3 months, and they had said they just got it a couple of days ago. And the child was really adamant of, well, no, I didn't get it. They were calling her sibling a liar for saying that she'd had it longer, and stuff like this. And this is a place where the child was just doubling down on, no, it wasn't. And when it came to the absolute truth that she was lying, she was absolutely devastated that she had to reveal that and to start to come into talking with their parents about this. And this is the kind of bind that the child gets put in, because there's a betrayal, one way or the other. There's a betrayal of a parent in this. There's a betrayal of the parent that is trying to get them to spy for them, and there's a betrayal of the parent that they're spying on. And it's a no-win situation for them. And the life lessons that are being taught by using children in this realm are deception and collusion, and these areas of enmeshment, of deep enmeshment, that lean on the edge of emotional incest and parentifying that child, that creates such a deep wound in these children that we've got to have things in place that we can keep this from happening, and ways of having conversation when this stuff comes up, that we don't make the children bad about it.
Yeah. And I think the spying starts with the after, like when a child goes to the other parent and then comes back to you. If you're doing an interview or some form of interrogation, that's creating the spy right there. If the kids are having to report back to you on what good and bad happened, you know what I mean? I feel like, I've been going through this. My girlfriend was going through it, and one of my best friends was going through it all at the same time, with all 3 exact scenarios where we left them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other 2 had much, much greater difficulties and stress than mine, but mine's pretty bad. But we all were talking about it as we were going through it, It's how I discovered you and all these resources and everything, all the books I've read and classes I've taken. And there's one very common theme, is that none of us are interviewing our kids when we pick them up from the other person's house, but any information we want to pass along. And we've even tested it with false information just to see what would happen,
Right.
It somehow, everything that happens and everything that's said ends up coming back to us from the other parent. And I can't relate to doing that to my kids, but it's pretty common, that interview, right?
It is pretty common, and some parents do it unwittingly, and it's not insidious, it's unconscious. And then there's the overt utilizing the children as a tool that happens as well. So what you're doing, what your friends are doing, is by not putting them in the middle, by not giving them a reason to tell you what's happening at the other parent's house, you find that they start to relax a little bit more. But you have to keep your antennas up, because there's this other conversation that's going on underneath. I mean, again, with the phone stuff, I've had many clients get set up by the other parent and the child to create some level of alienation to get a parent out of it by creating an upheaval and recording it, which is certainly illegal, and the courts aren't going to take it. But there's this adolescent game that's going on, if you will. I'm going to get them. Let's go get them. It's us and them. It's you and me, and it's against them. And to make the child feel special in that way is it seeds such deceit and ongoing turmoil in the child's being that we just can't tolerate that. We have to do things that take the child out of that.
And it could be because we're talking about people who have an emotional issue going on, right? So it may not necessarily be on purpose. They're making free will decisions, but it may not be that they're going, I want to hurt my kids. But I mean, my girlfriend and I have actually witnessed a father say to a child on transfer, remember, I'm your protector. If at any point you don't feel safe around your mom, you call me. You
Right.
call me if anything's not going the way you want to. And that, besides the fact from its part of sort of alienation and child abuse, that that's creating kind of a spy as well, or sort of the connection while they're not together. Like, you're the one to decide good and bad, and make sure you call me if bad's going. You know what I mean? It's not. It's just because we've seen that. I mean, over and over again, we've seen phones are interesting, right? We had some issues in our family, the blended family, where we wanted to use phones as discipline. You know, you take your phone away or not have time on your phone if you're doing this or whatever. And they said, well, dad bought me these, right?
Right.
And then we both, on my side and on her side, we've seen there's certain clothes that can't come to our house because they're what dad bought or what mom bought. And so we have these like awful clothes that don't fit or whatever the other home clothes are, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then on our side, we're like, whatever, if I buy you something, it's yours. You take it back and forth, do whatever you want with it, you know?
Right.
That's a really strange, and maybe as an adult, it's easier to compartmentalize and be okay with that in your head, but the kids, it just doesn't do good for them. They have all that weird separation and dad stuff and mom stuff. And what am I allowed to do? You know, what am I allowed to bring, not bring?
Well, it's total confusion of all the time that they're spending in the transition. Excuse me. The children are trying to orient, right? This is their main stability, is orientation. Where am I? Who am I with? And what is here? And what this putting them in the middle of is clouding that separation of the exchanges of whose house is here, of what the rules are, of the parallel parenting model, and really creating chaos within that. So the child doesn't have an opportunity to ever settle. I mean, these are children, Charlie, that we see with some of the most high levels of anxiety of any group of children that you can look at, because you know that anxiousness is coming out of not having stability, of not being able to orient to where I am, because there's this clouding of the barriers. Like you said, with clothes, well, I can't take that, but I can take that. And I can do this, but I can't do that. And the conversation of, well, I told you you couldn't take that there, and you took it there anyway. So there's a punishment that comes along with, you know, the normal thing. So the level of anxiety from being hyper vigilant to their surroundings is this creating of that next generation of personality traits that can move into emotional and mental health issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're in this conversation with the children, when it's like when the issue of this phone came up, it was, so what do you tell that child? What do you do with this child who has obviously deceived you, who has obviously taken these liberties with the other parent, bringing that into the house and taking pictures and recording stuff and texting back and forth these levels of attachment, enmeshment conversations that are going on, and you see it in real time and you're furious because of the level of betrayal there. And what happens for us as parents is we're at a choice point there. We can do one of two things. We can blow up and we can punish them for that moment, or we can use that as a teaching moment to come in and start to connect the mirror neurons, to start to create that empathetic conversation of, we are here to solve a problem here. How does this feel when this happens to you? What's going on for you in this place of being caught in the middle of this? And if this were taking place to you, which it is, how does that make you feel? Because you know what? That's how I feel. And neither one of us like the way that feels.
Yeah.
So let's have a conversation about coming back in and solving this problem. This is not something that you're responsible for, Joey. This is something that is between the other parent and myself. And I know that you're being put in the middle of this, but right now I'm going to take you out of the middle of it. I mean, I'm going to hold the phone. That's something that I'm going to do. And this piece of being deceitful has a consequence to it that, you know, maybe we're going to sit down and we're going to do a little research on what happens when trust is broken and how to do repair on it. Maybe we'll write a paper about that. So we'll start to feed them into the experience of what's taking place and giving them a choice point to do something different. The problem in that is they go over to the other parent's house and they get clouded up and rained all over because they're not doing what that parent is telling them to do or wants them to do. And now they are in the middle, even on that one side. So we've got to keep feeding this child as they come home to us this place of being able to have a conversation with us. And that conversation isn't going to be disclosed. It's not going to get them in trouble, but it's going to be an open conversation. Because the day is coming for all of these children that they are going to be teenagers and they are going to go out into the world and they are going to get into trouble and they're going to make a poor decision. And we have to have an open line of communication to them that says, we solve problems in this family. We work together. There isn't judgment on this, but there are boundaries and there's things that aren't allowed. And we will do correction, but nobody's going to die here. It's going to be a fair-handed consequence that we all learn from. You're bringing something to me to learn. I'm bringing something to you to learn. And we're going to continue this relationship based on that. Whereas with the other house, typically, that's not the case. It's more of you have to do it this way, my survival, the victim piece, all of these things come into that, and the child becomes parentified to make it better for the other parent. Yeah. And again, the conversation has to be somewhere around, that's not your job. Your job is to go to school. Your job is to learn how to be in a relationship. Your job is to learn how to be honest and ethical. And we're all gonna make mistakes in those arenas. But when we do repair. We fix. We don't beat or we don't punish. Right?
Yeah. I would just, as you're talking, I'm just thinking like all the training I've taken, books I've read, things like that. Talking with you, there's already this horrible phenomenon where when there's a divorce, some of the kids at certain ages feel like it might have been their fault, right? Because they just can't think, they can't think logically and conceptually until their brains are a little bit more developed. So they kind of have a tendency to blame themselves. I would think putting them in the middle So you have this kid who thinks it might have been his fault and wants you to get back together, another common thing, right?
Right.
And then you're giving him jobs to do. You're making him a spy, or I would think you run an incredible risk if you don't get back together of that kid being hurt even more, thinking they failed again. You know what I mean? They didn't do their job well enough, or they should have been a better spy, or they let down one of the sides or both or whatever. Is that a reality?
I think so. And, you're talking to their self-esteem and they're wanting to fix it. And the ramifications of that moving into adult relationships is quite interesting as well.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, oh, gosh. I remember when it was really early on and I just wanted to explain why I was leaving, right? Like, no, I'm not, whatever. There's all these bad things being said and I was trying to defend myself. I think I said things in ways that weren't appropriate. I mean, so we're kind of bad mouthing or whatever, and then quickly got control of myself and just didn't do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem to ever end in some marriages from coming from one side. The bad. I mean, I know divorces, they've been apart 6 to 10 years. Right. And it's still like major regularity for one of the, the other parent to just be saying the most incredible things or bringing up stuff, legitimate things that the one parent did bad from 6 or 10 years ago, and just keep reminding the kids, well, this is why you can't trust so-and-so because they did it, right?
Well, even stuff in real time and making things up that keep that piece going forward. If you ask any parent that is in the middle of one of these fights, right, they will tell you that the fight that they're in is about the children. And in many cases, that is far from being the truth. The truth of the matter in so many of these cases is it's about one or both of the parents using the children for an excuse to create control or to punish the other parent for leaving, for not doing the right thing, or whatever they perceive to be as the breach or the betrayal. So that the conversation about the children is so much more about the parents and their sense of right and wrong and their sense of belonging and their sense of self, that the kids just kind of are an ancillary consequence and they don't pay attention to that piece. And of course the kids are brought more into this idea of not being worthy of just being a kid and getting their needs met. If they don't do it right, if they don't do the pieces that the parent is asking them to do, they're not worthy of that parent's love. That simple piece. And the damage that's done to that child's self-worth, sense of self, is tremendous.
Mm-hmm. So a healthy divorce where you're not talking to the kids about adult things, you're not making them spies, right? You're not interrogating, interviewing them. I would think a healthy divorce, if you talk to those children in adult life and be like, what was it like? That they'd say something like, I was sad. I felt sad. I felt some grief that my parents were separating. And then all of a sudden we went from one house to 2 houses and we kind of went back and forth and they both seemed happier. And there it was. I didn't really know anything. I didn't know anything about the divorce. You'd probably ask them details of the court case or of whatever. And they go, I don't know. They didn't talk to me about that. Right.
Right.
And yet these unhealthy situations, the kids know the most incredible things. I talked to you about it earlier about a kid who's writing about, I wish so-and-so would get a restraining order or would hurt me so I could get a restraining order. And I wish the mediator would decide this so that I wouldn't have to do this. And the kid was 11. Like, how do you know at 11 what a restraining order is, what you would need someone to do to get one, or what a mediator is, or what control? How do you know that unless somebody's educating you and putting you in the middle of this?
Right.
A kid shouldn't know what a mediator is. A kid going through a divorce. I didn't even know what a mediator was until I met you, right?
No, the children should have no bearing on or idea of what these things are, yeah, we've got to do a parenting plan. Okay, parenting plan's a parenting plan. We need to know where we're going to be and what we're going to do. But who's making that decision? What are we doing to get to that decision? And all the arguing and the mudslinging and bad mouthing about the parents that's going on moving up to those parenting plans in these situations are the places that are causing the damage. It's not the process, it's the way the process is abused to create tension, to create a sense of a narrative that is going to get you what you want. And the cost is whatever the cost is. And many times the cost is the child.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the place I think when we're moving into this part of the conversation, Charlie, that if we're doing the right thing in here, if we're really keeping the children out of the middle, if we are taking care of our business on our side, we have to step back a little bit and take notes and kind of have an idea of where things have gone from the other side. So, you know, we're logging conversations, we're keeping real-time notes of what's going on, who's showing up, and all of this, but we're not engaging in an outward battle, and we're just taking care of the kids. And the people that are the decision makers in these arenas, they don't know in the beginning what's what. They can't see who's who until things start to unfold a little bit. But in many of the cases, these decision makers are watching, and they're gathering information on who is child-centered and who isn't. And
It takes more than 3 years.
sometimes it does. And the problem, you know, the reason it takes sometimes more than 3 years for this to take place is because of the process that you've gone through. It's like some people go to court and they'll go, no, this is just crazy. Let's go to mediation. Let's try to figure this out. And they go to mediation and they'll hit a stump and they won't get any further. And then they'll go back to litigation. And that piece in and of itself is a 2-year stint, right?
Yeah.
And so we've talked about, you know, knowing what you want, knowing what your parameters are, and how you want to get there as early as you can, as being a way to really cut through some of this stuff. But also knowing if things go in a certain direction, that in order to keep your time with the kids, in order to make things work, that you put yourself as a parent in a uncomfortable position rather than putting the children in an uncomfortable position. And one of the places for this is oftentimes, you know, travel for school as an example. A parent moves and the children start in another school and there is a 45-minute drive. And suddenly the parents are fighting over where this child's going to go to school. And there may even be schools that are very comparable to one another in these arenas. And the child is sitting here, you know, in July and August and September, not knowing where they're going to be going to school. Am I going to be where I was last year? Am I going to be in a new school? And the parents are fighting over it because of their own convenience. So this is just as an example, a parent that is focused on the child versus being focused on themselves would go, you know what? This is untenable for this child. And what I'm going to do is, you know, I own this house, but I'm going to put it up for rent. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to get another place to live close to where they go to school. And I'm going to keep continuity in their world. And then the conversation will come up, well, you know, this other parent's unstable and they may move. And what you've done is you've said, wait a minute, I've already made this move. I am being focused on this child. And if I end up back in court, that other parent is not now going to have the leverage to take that kid with them if they move to another school place, and I'm solid.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we're building in this opportunity to be seen as a child-centric parent on a bigger level, right? We're paying it forward, in other words. And when these people that are the decision makers are seeing this type of behavior, then the idea of the ability to get a better parenting plan outcome is increased dramatically. And I've had parents do this to the point where, the parent that has been fighting this shows up as being less stable, and that parent that's been more child focused ends up with more time and more stabilizing for the child. I had one client a number of years ago that had just gotten out of the military, and his ex, and he had gotten married. He lived here in Southern California, and his ex had gotten up and moved to Virginia. And I looked at him and I said, "So what are you going to do?" He said, "I'm moving to Virginia." And it was like, yeah, that was the right call.
Yeah.
That's where you go. That's where you are. You with your children. You don't fight to keep them in the middle of the fight over something that you as an adult can fix. Right?
Yeah. Are there times, let me be devil's advocate for the listeners, are there times when it's not legal what that other parent did to move out of state like that?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And you and I both know of cases of this that has happened. And then what do you do? I mean, this becomes a place of, we can try to get them back, and it's expensive. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. And what do we do if we don't? What do we do if we can't? And to me, again, it becomes this conversation about how am I going to solve this problem for the children and not have it be something that destroys my world, because in some cases, I've got a new partner and I've got a new family, and I can't just up and move them to Virginia or Ohio or Pennsylvania or wherever it happens to be. I have to make another adjustment here.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the adjustment that I can make that I can get a yes for? And sometimes I can get a yes for more time with the children over summers and holidays, and making that the best shot that I can do, rather than trying to yank them through a keyhole that they won't fit through. And if they do fit through, they come out misshaped, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So the piece in that is, okay, let's look at this from how crazy making this is for this child, how absolutely devastating it is for them to have to go over here. I'm going there. Oh, no, I'm not going there. Oh, wait a minute. They said I was going there. Oh, I went there and now I'm back here. And every component of their life is on hold. Their friendships are on hold. Their ability to be in relationships are on hold. The possibility for them to settle down and stabilize is yanked out from underneath them. And these huge levels of anxiety are what we see manifested in these children. And you know what anxiousness feels like. I know what anxiousness feels like. And for many of us adults, we can go, man, I'm feeling anxious. I need to take a walk, or I need to do something here to take care of myself. But children and adolescents don't have anywhere near those tools.
Yeah.
And they are jammed up in a place of just being in chaos all of the time in their internal landscape.
Yeah.
So how do we as parents look at this from a place of the big picture, the long term of this being about the child and not about us. And sometimes, and this is the hard part, we know that that child being in that environment is not the healthiest environment for them. And yet, if we extrapolate it out far enough, we can see that the fight is worse than that. So if I can back up, if I can solve the problem, if I can come up with a settlement in here that is good enough, we set the stage for something else to happen. Because remember what I said earlier, the decision makers are watching and they're gathering information. So when we are child-centric, when we are prepared to go in and make those personal sacrifices in some arenas for our children, we also know that through this running of this equation, that the other parent's ability to stay stable is typically not there. And they may do something when somebody isn't watching that somebody sees that changes the game for good. Period. And then when that change happens, the stability comes in organically. And I talk about organic solutions all of the time. You know, when parents step out of the constant fight of being a victim or trying to make their point or driving, you know, that conversation home, then what becomes revealed is the other parent's true self, their true behavior starts to shine through. And sometimes, oftentimes, they will say something or do something so far out of line that it's a game changer.
And I've heard you talk, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk so much that there's a theme sort of developing. It seems like the theme is get in front of it. Don't wait for it and don't wait for the stuff to happen and play defense. Get in front of the stuff, right? Jump on the software and recording everything right away. So record everything. Build long term. Sort of start to record and in front of the decision makers. Start to do things where you're seen as child centric, and basically hold tight and be a great dad or a mom until the other person screws up.
Yep. And what that is just going as neutral as you can in your own system. It's like, this is not something that's easy to endure. Where do I find a neutral in my system that I can endure this? And part of that is, by focusing and taking care of the business at hand. The business at hand is life. And when we're caught up in the fight, there's something that we haven't let go of. And we want to come to that point where we can let go of that. It's like, okay, I can let that go. I need to move forward, whatever this takes. And then moving on and parenting, building your business, building your parenting style, having your children involved in the things that they love with you, and having that be that place where they're carried forward in life. Because remember, when we're talking about the particular types of personalities and personality disorders-ish that we're keep circling around in this conversation, we've got a parent that has not let go, that has not moved on, and is not focused on parenting. So the children, by association, are stuck in that as well. So by doing this, we are releasing them into life. We're releasing them into learning how to be in the world in a place that is progressive and moving forward.
Right. I would think that the two things that people need to hear for sure before we're done would be, one, how do I not put my kids in the middle, right? Because we do it by mistake, right? Or by habit, or just, so how do we not put the kids in the middle if you're the healthy one? Secondly, what if my ex is and won't stop? Because we're not going to get them to change. You know, what I mean, that's just not the way these exes work. What
Right.
if my ex is doing it? Then what? So why don't you start with how do we not put them in the middle? Those of us who are like loving, conscious, healthy, just going, how do we do this? How do we have the greatest, healthiest, blended families or divorce, or whatever? How do we make sure we don't put the kids in the middle? Then we'll move on to the more difficult one.
Well, I think the most important piece of that is to look at it from the question, the continual question of, if what I'm about to do is going to put the children in the middle, then I'm not going to do it. And one of the parents, I think I've talked about this before in another podcast, but I love this. One of the parents came in and he kind of took a piece of the art of war, and basically what he delivered was, when you have the advantage, advance; when you're outnumbered, retreat; and when there's children on the battlefield, withdraw.
Yeah.
And this is that conversation. There's a child here. I'm going to step back and I am going to look for another way around this that doesn't put that child in the middle. And it can be as simple as a phrasing of a question. It can be the type of direction that they're given. It can be as simple as, yeah, that's the rules over there. We do it different here. And where are we, and what is it that we do here? And just having them be aware that this environment that they're in with is safe, and the conversations are not penetrating, in that nobody's questioning them and interrogating them about what's going on at the other parent's house, even if you are suspicious that there's something not right there. That's back to this idea of setting initial conditions when we start the divorce process, when we start to put the pieces together for parenting plans, that these children have a place to talk about it, that they have a therapist that they can have this conversation with.
Yeah.
And I don't know of, this has changed over the years, but if you can't get it up front in some of your first conversations with family court services, and starting to create the parenting plan, that you can say, this is a really hard time for our children. I think it'd be really good if we got them a therapist. And I've done a little research, and these people seem to be pretty good. And I've got 3 or 4 here that are under our insurance. I'd really like to get one of them into this. I don't know of an FCS person or a judge that would say no to that.
Mm-hmm.
And by virtue of doing that, you've solved a big part of the problem of keeping the kids out of the middle, of giving them a place that they can articulate what their concerns are with somebody that's a mandated reporter. And make no mistake, don't get me, wrong running down this road. I don't have a lot of faith in a lot of the child protective services arenas, but it's a start. And it's also a place where, if we stay in this long enough, we start to find that we do have enough information, we do have enough traction that somebody can raise their head up and go, yeah, it would be really good if we made a change here.
Yeah.
But that's
So,
the only way that we find it.
Give up some conveniences too, to not put the kids in the middle, right? Like, it's maybe easier for them to deliver the child support check or the whatever it is that you and the parents need to be handing back and forth. But you'd probably suggest, I'm guessing, just give up those conveniences, right? Just don't involve them in any of that stuff. For those of us who are kind of healthy and conscious, what about you're on the receiving end, right? And what about you're on the receiving end, and it's really obvious that the other parent is making them spies, putting them in the middle, whatever, whatever is as bad as you can think of it. What do you do when you're not going to change the other person, right?
Again, just holding it solid. I'm going to lose my headset here in a second, Charlie. So let's wrap this.
Okay, go ahead and go ahead. Why don't you just answer the question and then wrap it up? We'll be good.
Okay. Ask me the question one more time.
So what do you do if the other parent's like off their rocker and they're just putting the kids in the middle? Real quick at the end here, what do you think that we can do on our side. We're not going to change them. So what do we do when they're with us?
Right. So the only thing that we can do is, again, what we've been talking about, and that is to just keep them out of the middle on our side and have the conversations when things go wrong. And they are going to go wrong. The kids are going to really step in and do something that really irritates us, to sit down and have a conversation about it. You know, part of this piece that we're working with is teaching our children to have the hard conversation, to be able to talk about things that are not comfortable and to be able to resolve it. And in this case, it's not resolving the other parent, putting them in the middle. It is just resolving the breach in the relationship.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Good. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Brooke. All right, guys, this has been episode 13. Keep your kids out of the middle. Most of us, healthy, if you're a healthy parent, you're probably not doing it on purpose, but there's some things you can tweak here and there to just make sure that you're not adding any extra anxiety or stress for the kids. And if this is definitely happening on the other side, which is pretty common in high conflict separations and divorces, even more so when the kids are with you, we want to make sure that the environment is healthy and peaceful, and we're not creating any anxieties, and that you're not putting them in the middle or telling them the other parent shouldn't be that way. Remember, don't try to change the other parent. They're not going to listen to you anyway, and make them do things the way that you want. Just in your home, do the parallel parenting and provide the healthiest example you possibly can. You may be doing the only parenting that's happening right now because the other person hasn't even let go and they're focused on themselves. So Brooke and I will be back next Friday with another episode. Thank you so much, and keep fighting the good fight. Brooke, people don't have to wait until Friday mornings to get more content. If this is something that's helpful for them, right? This isn't the first time you've broadcast anything or recorded anything or put anything out there in the world. What are the other ways people can get the help more aggressively or speed up their recovery process? What materials are available for people right now?
Well, I've written a book called The Black Hole of High Conflict, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle.
Great.
And everything that we're talking about is really compressed and put into there. So this is a really good starter place to get in and get your mind working and to see what these concepts are about and how to start to apply them. The other place that I think that is valuable is to go to our website and look at some of the blog articles that I've written. Those are available there as well. They go into some of these other arenas, and that's at www.highconflict.net. So the book, the website are also really good places to get the material. And also we have classes. We have high conflict diversion program classes that you can get into and get some one-on-one help with this as well.
And you know me, I'm aggressive. Whatever I want to become good at or learn, I find someone who's good at it and pay them and hire them and shorten my learning curve. What if somebody just wants your help? Somebody says, Brooke has this information. He's good at something I'm not good at yet, and I want to work with him. Do you have any type of coaching or consultations or anything like that?
Absolutely. I do one-on-one coaching for custody cases. I help people get ready for family court services. If you've got that in your community, I work with attorneys and clients to help them with managing and strategically setting them up to have more successful cases as well.
And how do they reach out? You want them to just go to the website or email or phone, or what's the best way for them to reach out, raise their hand, and say, I need some help?
They can email me. My direct email is brooke@highconflict.net. That's BROOK at highconflict, HIGH, conflict.net.
Perfect. That's everything everybody would need to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brooke.